The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus summoned the 12 and gave them power and authority over all demons and to cure diseases. And he sent them to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal the sick. He said to them, "Take nothing for the journey, neither walking stick, nor sack, nor food, nor money, and let no one take a second tunic. Whatever house you enter, stay there and leave from there. And as for those who do not welcome you, when you leave that town, shake the dust from your feet in testimony against them." Then they set out and went from village to village, proclaiming the good news and curing diseases everywhere. The Gospel of the Lord. How appropriate that we have this Gospel on the memorial of St. Vincent de Paul. Vincent is a very important figure, not only in the life of the church, but in the life of our diocese. He was born in 1581, was ordained a priest at the age of 20. Soon after that, he was sold into slavery. He was captured by Turks and sold into slavery and spent 7 years in slavery, but he converted his owner to Christianity, who ended up releasing him. He returned to France and did all the wonderful things. And probably that moment of those 7 years when he was in slavery made him extra sensitive to the needs of the poor and to those whose lives are at the lower end of the spectrum. And so he did a great deal to form the clergy, founding also the Daughters of Charity, and founding, of course, the Vincentians. The Vincentians are an important presence in our diocese at Niagara University, and of course, Bishops Timon and Ryan were both Vincentians, followers of St. Vincent de Paul. So our diocese is founded on a Vincentian spirit. We have the St. Vincent de Paul Society, which is so active in our diocese and in just about every parish in the diocese, aiding the needs of the poor. Vincent's spirit instruction would be to see Christ. Christ's presence in any community is manifested by the presence of the poor, and so they ought to be treated as Christ would be treated. We recognize in the power of this gospel, too, a little bit of a contradiction here. Jesus gives the apostles power and authority, a certain kind of power and authority, but he also says, take nothing with you materially, because power and authority has nothing to do with material, but has everything to do with the Spirit of God. And that's a lesson that we ought to learn. Where does true power and authority come from? Does it come from wealth and manipulation? It's the world's judgment about it, and there's a lot of influence with money, but that's not Jesus' way. Don't use any of that. Power and influence, power and authority comes from God, and it brings always healing and wholeness. And in a sense, isn't Ezra stands as this figure now. The Babylonian captivity is over. The Persians have rescued the Israelites from Babylon and sent them back home and rebuilt their temple. And Ezra says a prayer today. We don't deserve any of this. Look at our past. It's all a grace. Everything is a grace. And Jesus will remind Pilate of that during the trial, won't he? Where is power? You would have no power over me whatsoever had it not come from above. So think about whatever power it is you have today and where it comes from. If it doesn't come from God, it's probably loose and shallow power. And if it comes from money or material goods, it's not power that's worth anything in God's eyes. But all of us have been given a great deal of power in the Spirit of God that dwells in our hearts. May we use that power well, as St. Vincent de Paul did, to influence the church, to help the poor, and to be a strong and saving presence, strong and healing presence in the midst of one another.